Hi Molly. This narration of my book, Life in a Pinball Machine, Memoir of an Idiot, is dedicated to you, my most beautiful niece, whose wisdom and sincerity has touched all our lives. Chapter 1, Molly, titled Full Tilt. David D. walked the hallways from class to class with awkward, irregular steps, his eyes generally cast to the floor. His legs would propel him forward while his arms hung limply to his sides, like unmanned oars on a rowboat, dragging languidly in the water. When the hallways would fill with a throng of other kids, he would angle towards the row of lockers along the wall, attempting to hug them, slowly inching along until the crowd thinned out. This was really unnecessary, however, for when David D. was in the halls, there would be a continued parting path for him to follow, made by the sea of frightened faces that saw him stumping along. And not to see David D. coming was beyond the realm of all possibilities. David D. stood about 6'5" with gangling stork-like legs and a short upper body. In fact, I would say that about 3/4 of his height was in his legs. He had a shock of oily yellow hair plastered heavily on his head, a thick strand in the front combed carefully to one side. He had porcelain-like white skin and translucent light blue eyes, eyes that were soft and penetrating in their quick, sidelong glances to kids passing by. Eyes that pled, "Please don't be afraid of me. I'm trying to stay out of your way." David D. always wore a long-sleeve plaid shirt and green corduroy pants that reached to about 4 inches above his ankles. The shirts didn't vary much in pattern or colors. They were usually gray or a cloudy white, or of a yellowish-brown blend, like that of a diseased liver. None of the bright, shouting colors were ever embroidered in his shirts. He always buttoned the very top button of his shirts, even when the temperatures would rise, ushering out the waning days of spring. The sleeves were tightly buttoned, entombing him like some embalmed mummy. And I don't believe I ever saw him wear anything other than hard leather black shoes, with the laces cinched tightly, and always stark white socks crumpled clumsily around his pencil-thin ankles, showing the bristle-haired pastiness of his lower legs, completely incapable of holding the socks up. David D. was never seen elsewhere but in the hallways by most of the kids. He was never seen in the lunchroom or in study hall, or even entering the school before the first bell rang. He was not even seen leaving the school when the last bell rang, and the rush of kids leaving could often be compared to a panicked mob fleeing a burning building. The only kids that saw him elsewhere were those that sat in the special classes he was placed in. Little did I realize at the time was that those kids were the fortunate ones, the kids that got to know him better, gained some sense of his innocence and humility, and its accompanying plight in simply wanting to give and receive an understanding of acceptance. I got to thinking about David D. the other day and asked my twin brother if he remembered him. He did, and he also thought he had heard somewhere that David D. died about 2 years after high school. Of what, he did not know. I occasionally think of David D. and of what his life must have been like. The lack of absoluteness to it would be enough to set the existential free will disciples dancing frantically around their own cultural totem. His life must have been much like that of the little polished ball inside of a pinball machine, bouncing back and forth between the stable bumpers, the self-assured, secure in their own knowledge, almost to the point of self-reverence, and of the belief that everyone can compass their own life. It is often said that you play the cards you are dealt. But in David D's life, I am certain that it was the dealing of the cards that played him. Anyway, when this bumping about first began in my own life, I am not certain. Over the years, all my memories seem to have been conflated into one continuous reactive experience. I do, however, have this very distant reflection, although vague, of the moments I spent leading up to when I was first plunged into this world. Chapter 2 will come in a few days, Molly. Thank you.